For me, it remains the only leadership development philosophy that just works, that gives freedom and kind of excitement for what's next rather than the fear. Sometimes I don't think about that. But then when I do go back, I'm thinking I could not be working with anyone else apart from organizations and in the land of leadership development and executive coaching. And the reason for that is that in my previous life, as I love to call it, I was part of the corporate world. So my heart still remains within that arena. But then there's also a belief of mine that organizations do shape the world. They shape us as individuals. On a very simplistic level, we spend so much of our time on a daily basis in organizations, and it's really, really important how we feel in that place, in our workplace, and more important than that, are we doing our meaningful work? And I think that executive coaching is a wonderful way to be on a journey with all those people in the organizations and help them find their meaningful work, which will make them feel free, bold, and in that sense, it will put them in a position to shape this world as a better place. Well, here I have to mention some of the names and whose shoulders I'm standing. And I will mention one of them is actually my coach, Ronnie Clifford. She's a coactive coach and so much more. And I still clearly remember when she told me the way to bring coactivity, and this is really not about the coactive model. This is about simply the way of being present with another person. The way of bringing that, as we call it, coactivity or being present with another person in the organizational world is through leadership circle profile. You go and you explore that. And so I did. And first of all, both leadership circle profile certification and collective leadership assessment certifications were amazing for me. They were done by two different people. The CLA was done for me by Liberto Pereda, so he still remains my teacher, even though he's not physically present here among us. So that's something I could never forget. But after having gone through the certification, just by taking the book, Mastering Leadership, things have fallen into place. So the idea of us having a certain operating system that can be upgraded, having our identity that can be restructured so that we can structure our identity on the new level, that kind of language, like somebody named that for me, that made all the difference. I suddenly understood what this whole growth and development is about. And also the idea that we're never static and that we can never really fail, that we're just being stretched and we're just walking on the edge until we restructure our identity on the next level, getting us ready for bigger things in our lives. Now this is the kind of mindset, if you like, that was brought to me by Leadership Circle, by the universal model of leadership. And for me, it remains the only leadership development philosophy that just works, that gives freedom and kind of excitement for what's next rather than the fear. Like I can always do better and reach next level of myself. Yeah, so whoever's working with me has probably heard me say this sentence so many times. I don't think I can actually speak about leadership and leadership development without mentioning the Leadership Circle profile or collective leadership assessment. So without referring back to the universal model of leadership. So it has been integrated in almost every aspect. I would actually say every aspect of my work. So it's part of my executive coaching programs. Simply start by doing the Leadership Circle profile because it gives us immediately the such important insights that allow us to do the deep work and really transformational work. It's part of my programs. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that necessarily every individual will have to be assessed. But we have such wonderful tools. So to resume, so Leadership Circle is part of every program of mine, regardless whether I do women's leadership development, or I do leadership development in many other programs that I have. The philosophy is part of the program. I bring it in a way that I train people to understand what leadership is and what leadership development is, and I use it as a roadmap throughout all of my programs, just to understand where we are now, where is it that we want to be, and what's the gap in between that needs to be closed. I love that you're asking me how to describe it in a nutshell, because there are so many ways to describe it. And when we go into how it's been validated and all the measurement, all these things that really corporate environment likes to hear. But I many times go to something very simplistic, yet I feel it's powerful. So leadership circle profile is the doorway into your deep developmental work. So it will tell you what is the game you play in your leadership. Is that playing not to lose or playing to win? And seemingly these are two equal games, but essentially they're totally different. And knowing this game, it will give you the answers how to increase your leadership effectiveness and utilize your potential so that you can create the legacy that you really want. I still remember my leadership circle profile assessment, and I'm planning to take a retake soon. And there's something that I personally do, and I also point all of my clients to do the same. Go back to your leadership circle profile, right? I remember when I first saw my results, of course, they were eye-opening. It was a moment of, oh, okay, now where do we go from here, right? So I still go back. There are still places where I slip, and as a human being, I'll think, oh, why is this happening, and what? And then I think, why don't you go back to your leadership circle profile and find your answers there? And regardless of how old the assessment is, I always manage to find my answers there. It always serves as a roadmap to, okay, so it's not that, what else? What was actually my intention? And how else do I need to bring it forward so that it can have the impact that I actually desire? And leadership circle profile gives me these answers every time. There's one, I cannot say it was challenging, but it was definitely the most memorable one. Obviously, it was a beautiful profile. It was fully creative profile, if we can call it that way. But it was almost like it got to the point where it went from creative to be integral. That requires a different type of conversation. That was so far the only kind of conversation that I had of that type, of that kind. It felt like a soul-to-soul conversation. It felt like a conversation in such a present moment. And obviously the challenge of that was from time to time, when you go back to that level one of listening, to think, oh my God, is this making any sense? What are we talking about here? It's not tangible, and yet it feels it is the right conversation for this person who is just going to take, this person is brilliant and it's going to take the next brilliant step in their own leadership. And then, of course, there are those other challenging debriefs when a client does not want to accept the picture in the mirror. And I think it's a great deal depends on us coaches to really meet these clients where they are so that we can take them places. To have a lot of patience and compassion, and yet a lot of boldness to challenge them in all the right moments. I would always say, go and have your own coach, right? I mean, we are in the coaching industry. We're trying to say that coaching is part of your hygiene. We need to have our coaches ourselves, because otherwise we're not walking the talk. That is the first thing. Then the second thing is, there are so many brilliant people in this community. Go and reach to one of those people. I truly believe that if we are deep down inside of us, we're living the elements of the leadership circle profile, we are always willing to help, because we believe in this kind of world. This is not about the tool. This is not about the product or the philosophy. This is about believing in this way of the being of the world. And so we are there to help and to support. So go and reach and ask for a little bit of a supervision to help you manage your way with your next client. Self-manage in the moment. Be well prepared before you enter a debrief. Take a look at that image. Who is this person? Even before you meet that person, who is this person? Looking at this image, what invites you to this person? What might be triggering for you in this person? So do your own, do your own coaching with yourself in that sense before you go and you meet that person. We can make such a great impact just by meeting that person and supporting them as they meet themselves, looking at their own profile. It takes the responsibility to understand that role of ours, and we need to be ready for it. You know, my first response to this one is like crazy, like a roller coaster. I definitely believe in the empowering approach rather than a limiting approach, right? So first and foremost, coaching is a global sport, a global business, right? It's not a national thing, and we don't have to really limit ourselves to our markets, no matter how small or big these markets are. And then the second thing, if it is a small market, as mine is, if we're talking about Croatia, if we consider Croatia as a market and not the region or Europe or even broader, my philosophy was, what's important about bringing this tool into this market? What's important about the level of consciousness here? What kind of change I can actually make by bringing this tool? And then many times, this is not just about focusing on the clients. In all simplicity, people who will come and purchase from you. This is about developing the community. The bigger the community, we will be speaking more about this philosophy. We will be showing our passion more. If it's more of us and not just one person who's showing the passion for this work, there'll be more people who will be interested, because passion is contagious. Now, this does require one intention. You really have to love this tool. You have to believe in it. Just like I feel it's true for any other idea. It's not about selling this idea. It's about believing in this idea, living this idea, and then understanding it, deepening your knowledge about it, and that will speak through you, no matter how big or small the market is. Yes, we have a long way to go. Many times in my women's leadership development programs, I've referred to, and I took here a piece of paper just to not mess up with the data. I refer to the gender parity gap, which I actually explain as we as women, we're not being equally present in 4 key elements of our society. Right? And if I just refer to the Global Gender Gap Report from June 2023, this is what it says. At the current rate of progress over the 2006-2023 span, it will take 162 years to close the political empowerment gender gap, 169 years for the economic participation and opportunity gender gap, and 16 years for the educational attainment gender gap. The time to close the health and survival gender gap remains undefined. Now, this is the data that definitely speaks to the fact that there's a long way for us to go. There are so many women's leadership development programs, and that gives hope, at least in our industry, that we're doing something about that. And while there are systemic changes that need to happen, as a coach, as a leadership development specialist, I always love to go back to ourselves first, not trying to say that this is going to sort out the situation, but trying to say that this is a good place to start from. To offer these programs to women, to encourage and find the sponsors for these programs, so women could really step into the land of getting to know their own value and making choices to bring it out there in a non-apologetic way. From pure experience, so many times what I hear from these women is, I feel guilty. I'm juggling so many roles. My priority is my family. Why? Because if I have them safe and sound, then I can focus on what I really love in my life. So there's something about giving ourselves permission to go and do our meaningful work. Does that mean we don't love our families? Of course not. Does that mean we all need to have and build families? No, we can have a choice, and it needs to be our choice. But there's something about us women giving ourselves permission to do a meaningful work, bring our value to the table so that we're not on the menu, but that we do have a seat at the table. There are many challenges, and when we look at the data, they speak clearly to what the challenges are, and we need to have systemic changes. At the same time, I believe that a good place to start from is ourselves. So one of the challenge that's completely under our control is to give ourselves permission to go after what we want and to really bring our full selves in an unapologetic way to the table and into the world.